Water is a precondition for life. But nutrients, chemicals and silt drain into the rivers as they wind their way downstream to Lake Victoria. This is a threat to the people and the environment. Lake Victoria is the most important shared resource of three countries: Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. The region has a vast potential for economic and social development, but there are constraints. The lake is suffering from severe pollution and nutrient overload. One of the visible signs of the water's deterioration was the invasion of water hyacinths in the 1990s. Now the spread's been halted, due primarily to the efforts of a project financed by the World Bank. But there are still a great many hyacinths, covering most of the lake shoreline, blocking the intakes to the town's water supplies and affecting local fishing. There are more than 30 million people in the region, and that number is growing very rapidly. It's a young population. More than half of the people are under 18 years of age. The challenges are many. The jobs are few. Food security is vulnerable. The infrastructure has flaws. The AIDS epidemic has turned into a human catastrophe. The cities are growing bigger and bigger. They're important trading centres where people from the surrounding rural areas come to sell their products. Trade is lively here, and there's a daily battle to make enough to pay for the absolute necessities. The increasing influx into the urban areas has led to a rise in the number of poor living on the periphery of the city. Unemployment is high there, with people having to live under very difficult conditions. Most of the people still live in the rural areas. Today, the big challenge for agriculture is to increase food production, especially in view of a fast-growing population and the problems caused by the ongoing climate change. The Lake Victoria Basin abounds in natural and human resources, but the majority of the people still live in abject poverty. At the same time, Lake Victoria is a unifying factor for the people around the lake. That's why the East African Community, the intergovernmental regional body for Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania and Uganda, has taken on the task of coordinating a program for sustainable development in the region. As part of the development program, the East African Community works to promote trade and economic growth in the region. A Lake Victoria Transport Act has now been passed, which has created a common set of regulations for shipping in the region. Another area which requires regional cooperation is the management of the rivers that cross national borders. For instance, the Mara River, shared by Kenya and Tanzania. Sweden and Norway are now financing the development of effective institutions for the joint management of the water in these river basins. Fish has always been an important source of food and income for the people around the lake. In the 1950s, the Nile perch was introduced into Lake Victoria. It isn't native to the lake and has now forced out almost all other fish. However, the Nile perch came to provide food for the people and an income for fishermen and fishmongers. In the 1990s, the fish export industry expanded rapidly, based on big catches of Nile perch. In order to sustain the fish stocks, the East African community has made efforts to regulate the fisheries. For Nile perch, it's now been agreed that only fish between 50 and 85 centimeters may be processed. Beach management units are to be set up at all landing sites in order to help enforce the rules. The fish is filleted, and the waste, heads and backbones are taken away and sold on the local market. The fillets are exported to Europe and the Middle East. There are more than 30 fish processing plants around the lake, with a total turnover of more than $400 million per year. In the local markets, there's now less fish for sale, and the prices have risen. This situation has become an issue for debate among politicians and civil society organizations.
If you ponder and look back where we have come from, look at the way our people live. The poverty is so much biting that it looks like Lake Victoria is very, very, very far. And yet we are being told it generates $400 million. But the people, the local communities are suffering as if the lake is very far and as if the lake is meant for other people and not the local communities. That's why you have this goal.
Agriculture is the principal source of food security, nutrition and human well-being in the Lake Victoria region. 8 families in 10 depend on small-scale farming for their livelihoods. But today the soil's fertility has diminished in many areas and the harvests are decreasing. Trees have been felled for timber and firewood, leaving the land open and unprotected. When the heavy rains come, the fertile topsoil is broken up and the water carries the soil away.
Kakati wano mboga zino mboga.
Alex Yiga shows us around his farm in southern Uganda, a farmstead of about 2 hectares. For the last 3 years, Alex has been implementing agroforestry, which is a soil conservation system where trees and crops are mixed in the fields. He's been advised by the VI agroforestry program, VI being a Swedish non-governmental organization.
Nga mmere ya bisolo ate nga gukwata ettaka ate mu ngeri ndaguzaamu ekigimusa mu ttaka n'olumu tufunako enku kati ng'obwo sobola okubutema ne bufuuka enku. Kakati ku nnimiro y'emu tusimbako emiti.
Nali mbonaabona nnyo n'enku naye kati okulaba nga tuyina ze tutuuma wano ne mu nnyumba eri nga zijjudde mu sitoowa. Nabonaabonanga nnyo nga ntambula emitala ng'esatu okutuuka ewali enku kyokka nga za kunoonya si kutuuka nti ogenda kuziggyayo bujja weetika okomewo ng'otwala essaawa nga 3 ng'oli eyo mu nsiko.
The women's working days are long, what with the farm and housework and looking after children. But when it comes to planning and decision-making, the women aren't really involved. There are many laws, norms and values that keep women on the sidelines. This gender imbalance is one of the biggest obstacles to development in the region. The environmental perspective is important when implementing new business initiatives. Today, the systems for pollution control, refuse collection and wastewater treatment leave much to be desired. In most cities, the sewage utilities lack the required capacity and are poorly maintained. In fact, some stations are completely broken down. This means that today most of the human and industrial waste is mixed together and discharged into open ditches. All this waste ends up untreated in Lake Victoria. There are large areas of wetlands around the lake which have an important filtering function for the water before it enters the lake. And with their wide variety of plants and animal life, the wetlands also help maintain the biodiversity. But today the wetlands are under a considerable amount of pressure. The levels of polluted water are increasing, and at the same time people have started encroaching onto the wetlands, turning them into farmland. Sustainable management of the wetlands is the focus of a research program financed by Sweden. The program involves a network of researchers from the 3 East African countries. This particular research team is trying to find out the actual level of nutrients and heavy metals in the lake. Samples of fish of different species are analyzed for levels of mercury and uranium. The research team is multidisciplinary. The communities close to the wetlands are studied from a socio-economic perspective by one member of the team.
Actually, if you look at the economic activities around, you find that it is mostly the women who are actually doing something small to support the family. For example, the women around buy the fish and they prepare the fish by frying them, then they sell to earn a living. But the men are mostly idle and are unemployed because of lack of jobs around.
Fighting unemployment, especially among youth, is of strategic importance for development. Emmanuel Boguba has tried to address this issue in his home village of Ihushi in Tanzania. He started a training center for youth from Ihushi and the neighboring villages. The students learn vocational skills and in the process develop self-confidence as young men and women.
Lakini sasa hivi ninapenda tu kusema kwamba najivunia mafanikio haya, kwamba sasa tunao mafundi wa hapa kijijini ambao wanaweza wakawasaidia watu kutengeneza milango, kutengeneza madirisha ya nyumba zao, kwa vile tunashawishi ujenzi wa nyumba bora. Vitu vyote hivi vinaweza vikafanyika bila kumtafuta mtu mwingine kutoka kwenye kijiji kingine. Sisi tunayaona kwamba tumesaidia jamii kwa kweli, pamoja na maamuzi yetu ya kwanza na vijana. Nguvu kazi yetu ya vijana inapotea kwa ugonjwa wa ukimwi, lakini vijana tulionao tunawafundisha sana kila mara, angalau kila mara moja kwa wiki, na hatupendi tukapoteza nguvu kazi yetu. Basi tunajivunia kwamba kama yote haya yatafuata, basi nguvu kazi yetu ya kijiji cha Ihushi itakuwa bado iko salama.
The Swedish government has made a unique long-term commitment to support the Lake Victoria region. It has pledged support for the next 20 years. The people of the region are facing many challenges for sustainable development. Today, there is a framework available through the East African community to help solve the different problems in a sustainable way. Of central importance here are the joint efforts of all the actors: men and women, governments, the private sector, research organizations, civil society and development partners.